Star Wars, a great film series, sometimes. Despite probably being the most popular film franchise of all time, Star Wars is not without its problems. It has a lot of weak moments in the movies, a lot of weak movies overall, but of course, these problems don't mask the fact that some of these movies are incredible. I love the Star Wars movies. I grew up with the original trilogy as well as the prequels. I saw all of the sequel trilogy in the theater on New Year's Day. I'm going to be ranking all 9 of the main saga films in the Star Wars series from worst to best. That of course means I'm not going to be talking about any of the spin-offs like any of the animated movies or any of the TV specials, or of course the Star Wars stories, Rogue One and Solo. Just episodes 1 through 9, and I suppose I can start pretty easily with the worst. Attack of the Clones. If you've watched my videos from the very beginning, you probably know what I think about this movie. This movie sucks. I dropped it on the floor in my video about bad movies with good scenes, and if you haven't seen that video, I recommend you do. I actually kinda like that one. And yeah, in that video, I admitted that I really hate Attack of the Clones. It is easily the worst Star Wars to me, and I've seen people bringing up their hot takes that it's actually not terrible. I think a lot of that might be because of people who grew up with the movies, but that isn't true for me at least. I actually grew up with Attack of the Clones, and it was the first prequel that I saw. And I really liked the movie as a kid. Why, I can't really say. Now I think this movie has barely anything redeeming in it at all, if anything at all. It's tonally awful. It has horrible romantic moments. It has awful, bland action with terrible CG effects. Like I said when I talked about this movie before, I do like the scene where Obi-Wan fights Jango Fett in the rain. Everything else falls completely flat. There's nothing redeeming in this movie, really. Maybe it can be nostalgic. Even I can get nostalgic for it sometimes, even though I hate this movie. But we can just skip past that now and talk about the next one, which is, of course, The Phantom Menace. Phantom Menace, I think, gets a little bit too much hate. Not saying it's a great movie or anything, it's still bad. I actually like parts of Phantom Menace way more than Attack of the Clones, for a lot of reasons. One, it feels like they're having fun. It's a fun movie. The visuals are still not great, but they look a lot better. Obviously, this movie has problems. It's pretty slow. There's a lot of boring Jedi Council moments, and everything involving the Senate is bland. Darth Maul, I don't get why people love this character so much. He has no personality. He's in 3 scenes and says 1 line. Battle at the end is great, obviously. It's one of the better lightsaber fights in the series. But at the same time, you have Jar Jar being a doober, and then it's Space Boy Anakin flying through the space station or whatever. Honestly, everything with Anakin in this movie is pretty bad, though obviously better than what they did in the next one. Ugh. It sounds like I'm hating on this movie. I really don't hate it because it's definitely watchable compared to so many other movies people will say are amongst the worst of all time. People like to add this one for some reason. It's not nearly that bad. Phantom Menace can easily be watched and enjoyed despite, or maybe because of, how bad it is. Alright, next up, number 7, Rise of Skywalker. People have been sharing so many thoughts on this movie since it came out. I don't have enough time to say everything I would want to say. This isn't a full review of Rise of Skywalker, and I'm not going to spoil anything if you still have not seen it. Here is my opinion. Some of the elements that are in this movie that they brought from previous movies are either not explained well enough or are not well implemented. It leads to the ending of this trilogy being inconsistent, and this is another movie where I don't hate it. As I was watching this movie, I was having a great time. It's when you really start to think about the story and realize none of it makes a lot of sense. You start to realize J.J. Abrams didn't know what he was gonna do after The Last Jedi. So rather than trying to just keep moving forward with what was set up in The Last Jedi, he just did what he thought the fans would want, which of course is not what the fans wanted. The new characters in this movie are also quite forgettable for the most part. Some are fine, some are there for a scene. They want to set something up but then don't do anything with them. That's quite disappointing. That said, I do like the way they deal with Kylo Ren's character, and I love Adam Driver. The acting all around is really good. Yeah, the action's fine, it's not anything mind-blowing, especially compared to the previous couple of movies. It's so easy to hate on this movie, and I hope I can like it more the next time I watch it. We'll see. At the moment, I'm super conflicted on it, and my opinion on it isn't super solid, so it being here at the bottom doesn't mean I dislike it. However, it is far from being my favorite. And that is all I will say. Alright, let's get into the really good Star Wars finally. The Return of the Jedi is really dang good, but it is easily the weakest of that original trilogy. Return of the Jedi is a little bit strange. Kinda crazy this is this far down on my list now, since as a kid this was always my favorite Star Wars movie. It easily, of the original trilogy, has the biggest sense of fun. It's more of an upbeat adventure, even though obviously terrible things are happening all throughout. But the action is way more fun, it's all daylight and excitement, and you've got Endor with the Ewoks, and you've got Jabba's palace, which is a good scene. I don't care what anyone says, it's a great setup. The problem I do have with this movie, that I don't know if it's a popular opinion or anything, or if anyone else has thought of it, certain parts of this movie, especially at the beginning, feel like the start of a TV episode more than the final installment in a hugely popular and successful trilogy. And it's also a little bit strangely paced at times. The visuals aren't nearly as good as the previous two movies, though still revolutionary, obviously. Squeaky. This is still a great movie. It could still be your favorite, and that's completely fine. I still love this movie. Coming in after it, though, Revenge of the Sith. Yep, I like Revenge of the Sith more than I like Return of the Jedi. I think a part of this is because this movie is ingrained forever in meme culture. So many of the lines in this movie are wonderfully memeable. This is such an entertaining movie. It was always my favorite of the prequel trilogy and still is. This is the only one of them that I think is legitimately good. It's clear that George Lucas had an actual idea for what he wanted this whole trilogy to be, unlike the sequel trilogy. From the first episode, he knew what he wanted to happen in all of these movies. So, Revenge of the Sith has actual payoff to a lot of things that were built up and set up in the previous two films. And the CG has heavily improved. The opening space battle that leads to General Grievous's ship, the rescue of Palpatine, I really like. It's a lot of fun. This movie's fun again after Attack of the Clones had none. They do better with Obi-Wan, he's awesome. This is where I actually start to like Ewan McGregor. I love this Obi-Wan, even if he does kinda contradict original trilogy Obi-Wan, I don't care. I actually like what they did with Anakin this time. It feels like he's actually becoming the Darth Vader we already are familiar with in the original trilogy. Sure, he's still whiny, angsty young boy, but it's progress. You don't become an evil mastermind overnight. Yeah, the fight scenes in this movie are just so good.
Hi, so while I was recording the Revenge of the Sith section for the video, the camera ran out of space on the SD card, so I lost the end of that part of the recording. The idea of what was lost is the music is good, the atmosphere is good, and the movie is good. I just didn't want to leave the video with an empty transition between talking about the fight scenes to talking about the next movie, so that's all I have to say.
Alright, time for some more hot takes. Coming up next on the list is The Last Jedi. I really like this movie. I don't know if this is the most divisive Star Wars movie. I think it probably is. As someone who likes The Last Jedi a lot, I see criticisms people bring. Some of them are legitimate, some of them aren't, and I don't understand why they have such a problem with them. I don't have it in me to talk too much about this movie because I don't want people to debate with me on whether or not this is a good movie. I think it is. My opinion changes over time on multiple viewings. I might like it more, I might like it less. As it is now, I see the problems, I ignore the problems because I don't want my enjoyment of this movie that I do greatly enjoy to be ruined. If Disney continues to make standalone one-off Star Wars movies, don't make another saga or trilogy or anything, please. I want Rian Johnson to make another one. I want to see what he can do with something, not being restricted with what he can and can't put in. That's all I'll have left to say about The Last Jedi. I like it, and you don't have to. If you don't like it, that's completely fine. And next is The Force Awakens. More than The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, Force Awakens feels like a Star Wars movie. The Force Awakens is a movie that you can have a lot of fun with. It feels like Star Wars. It's exciting to see in a theater. There's so much hype, so much build-up. Even now, 4 years later, I still like this movie a whole lot. I love seeing these characters again. I love seeing the new characters. I think The Force Awakens has the best action in this trilogy, by far. Even though I don't think it's perfect, it's certainly not the best movie of even the whole decade, but I really love it. I think that's all that matters, is that regardless of a movie's problems it may have, which it definitely does, that's fine. Can it be enjoyed? Does it make you feel good while you're watching it? Yes and yes to The Force Awakens for me. This is a movie that just feels special to me because having grown up with Star Wars, seeing a new good Star Wars movie in a theater just felt special, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. It's the Star Wars I was able to experience in a theater, and that'll always mean something to me. Regardless of the actual quality of the movie, I do love The Force Awakens at least for that. Alright, now it's time for the final two. You already know which ones they are, and you probably already know which order they're in. Number 2 is the original Star Wars, A New Hope. This is just such a special movie to me and a lot of people, and just in general, this is a special movie. It's not often something comes out, a movie, a book, a game, anything, that will end up defining an entire many generations. Star Wars created something that does not come around often. Not only is it uncommon to get movies this good anyway, especially movies this original, because you have to realize, without all of the crazy sequels and expanded universe and all of the things that surround this movie, as one contained story, it's just a good movie. It has great characters, it has great action, it has great build-up and space travel and visuals you never see in a movie like this before or now. I love the original Star Wars. It has great characters, especially Han Solo. This movie introduced the world to Harrison Ford, and it gave us Darth Vader, one of the best movie villains of all time, and it gave us The Empire Strikes Back, my absolute favorite Star Wars movie, and most people's absolute favorite Star Wars movie. Empire Strikes Back is one of very few movies that I'm willing to say is straight up perfect. It follows up what was already a masterpiece, it raises the stakes, it darkens the tone. This movie is more about the characters. Luke having to learn the ways of the Force so that he can save the entire galaxy from Darth Vader. It has great comic relief characters in the form of R2 and 3PO. They are absolutely hilarious. Even a serious movie like this can have fun and humor, and Empire Strikes Back blends its tones perfectly, from lighthearted humor and really dark and depressing reveals. Obviously everyone knows about the twist. It's so good. It makes sense, it's surprising, and it makes you really want to see what happens next. This is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, plot twist in all of film history, all of fiction history. I love this movie. It's so good. It's one of my top 10 of all time, and I will always love it. I could watch it apart from the rest of the trilogy, appreciating it more as an adult than I did as a kid. And this movie is an absolute masterpiece in every single way to me. And that's the end of my list. My question of the day for you is, what is your Star Wars ranking? Not just the saga, but all of them. You can put Rogue One and Solo in, you can put the Clone Wars or the holiday special, just put whatever you want. But if you do enjoy watching these videos, subscribe so that you can see the next one. I'll be talking about my favorite movies of 2019 next time, hopefully in time for the Oscars. And until next time, I will see you next time.